Um, Imagine a scenario where your bank account, your resume, and, your actual intelligence just mean absolutely nothing.
Right, like they literally hold zero value.
Exactly. A scenario where a single broken promise doesn't just damage your reputation or give you bad PR, but it immediately downgrades your biological and spiritual classification as a human being.
It's intense. It completely strips away all the multivariate ways we usually calculate human worth.
Yeah. So we're looking at a text today where a canceled lunch date or a missed deadline isn't just a social faux pas. It is the total bankruptcy of your existence.
Yeah, and we're examining a really fascinating, uncompromising 2020 essay by an author named Feng, and it's titled Keeping Promises is the Quality of a High-Level Life.
Okay, let's unpack this because the mission for our deep dive today is to explore that exact architectural logic. We're going to examine how this author elevates the simple act of keeping your word to a matter of life, death, and literal existential survival.
Right, because this text operates on a startlingly brutal binary system. It forces the reader to look at trustworthiness not as, a polite social virtue, but as the foundational structural physics of reality itself.
I love that phrasing, the structural physics of reality, because the text introduces a concept right away that totally redefines how we measure human value, calling trustworthiness a person's invisible wealth.
Yeah, and the terminology there is highly deliberate. By categorizing trust as wealth rather than just a virtue or a good habit, the author immediately frames it as an economic reality.
A spiritual, economic reality, essentially.
Exactly. Think about visible wealth, right? Property, capital, influence, all of that fluctuates. You can lose it, you can gain it back. But this invisible wealth operates as the absolute baseline currency of your existence.
So if you go bankrupt there.
If this specific credit goes bankrupt, the text states that a person's life level actively, definitively decreases.
Okay, wait, hold on. Let's look at the absolute extremes of this framework because I want to make sure I'm getting this right.
Go for it.
Under this logic, you could be like a total visionary. You cure a major disease, you donate billions to charity,
Right.
you employ thousands of people, you're widely beloved by society. But if you flake on a single commitment, you are instantly categorized as a low-level life.
That's what it says.
Like there is zero middle ground for someone who is generally fantastic, but just, I don't know, occasionally forgetful.
Zero. What's fascinating here is how utterly it rejects modern metrics of success.
Yeah.
The text explicitly states that a person's character should never be judged by their ability, their wisdom, their wealth, their status, or their looks.
Which is wild because that's literally how the entire world judges people right now.
It is. But in this essay, those attributes are essentially just multipliers in a mathematical equation. Trustworthiness is the base number.
Oh, I see.
So if your trustworthiness drops to zero because you break a promise, it doesn't matter how large the multipliers of intelligence or wealth are. Zero multiplied by a billion is still zero.
Wow. Still zero. You become a low-level life.
Exactly. The visible wealth simply cannot compensate for the invisible deficit.
So basically, someone's brilliance or status has absolutely no structural integrity to rest upon if that invisible wealth is bankrupt.
Right. The foundation isn't there.
It's a really compelling way to view human interaction, especially, for you listening. If you're well-versed in observing how frequently modern leaders separate their professional output from their personal integrity.
Oh, constantly.
Right. We often accept a totally fractured foundation if the building on top looks impressive enough. I'm like, oh, he lies, but he makes a company so much money.
Yeah, and the essay argues that accepting that fractured foundation is an illusion that will inevitably correct itself.
The market will correct, so to speak.
Essentially, yes. The author insists that if you don't keep promises, your quality is guaranteed to be poor. And if you do keep them, your character is guaranteed to be excellent.
Which leaves absolutely no room for nuance.
None. But that lack of nuance is exactly what gives this philosophy its terrifying predictive power.
Right, and here's where it gets really interesting. Because that predictive power is where the essay scales up massively.
It goes way beyond the individual.
Yeah, the author doesn't keep this confined to just personal morality. They argue you can accurately predict the future trajectory of massive, complex systems based entirely on this single metric.
Systems like multinational corporations or sovereign countries.
Yes, and if we're looking at that, the concept reminds me of like a fractal pattern in nature.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Because if you look closely at a fern, right, a single tiny leaf on that fern has the exact same geometric shape as the larger branch it grows on.
Right.
And that branch has the exact same shape as the entire plant. You can zoom all the way in or zoom all the way out, and the structural rule remains totally identical.
That's a great way to picture it. The author is basically applying a moral fractal to human organization.
Exactly. But is it really that direct of a domino effect, like in the real world?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the underlying logic is that society, at every single echelon, is fundamentally just a web of agreements.
Okay, a web of agreements. Break that down for me.
So the text outlines 3 distinct levels for this fractal: the nation, the enterprise, and the individual.
Okay, let's start at the top. The nation.
Right. The essay states that if a country's leader breaks their promises, the entire nation will decline.
Which sounds dramatic, but I guess.
It sounds dramatic, but think about it. This isn't just about citizens getting angry or the leader having bad polling numbers. The entire mechanism of governance relies on the fiat of assumed future action.
Right, like we assume the laws will be enforced tomorrow the same way they are today.
Exactly. If the leader's invisible wealth is bankrupt, the laws and treaties they sign lose their metaphysical backing. The structural agreements that bind the institutions together begin to actually dissolve.
Oh, wow. And it's the exact same for the enterprise level, isn't it? The text claims that if a company's leader breaks promises, the business will inevitably go bankrupt.
That's the argument.
Because a corporation is really just thousands of formalized promises operationalized into a supply chain.
Yeah, employment contracts,
Vendor agreements.
shareholder expectations.
Right, so if the leader bankrupts their invisible wealth, those contracts are void in spirit long before the financial spreadsheet catches up.
Yes. The company must decline because it is no longer supported by reality. And the author uses words that translate to sooner or later, which is important.
Okay, so it might not happen overnight.
Right. It demands a long-term view from the reader. Reality will eventually correct itself to match the moral bankruptcy at the top of the hierarchy.
That is so heavy. And then I guess if we zoom all the way back into the smallest leaf on the fern, we hit the individual level.
We do. And the text has a really fascinating, almost visceral way of describing the individual who breaks promises.
It does. It says their life will devolve into dishonesty, and it actually likens them to a petty thief, like someone acting like a thief in the night.
Yeah, that's a striking image.
It really is. It concludes that they will ultimately end up incomplete and flawed. But why a thief? That feels so specific.
Well, think about the actual mechanics of a broken promise.
Okay.
When you make a commitment to someone, you are creating a shared future reality with them. You are saying on Tuesday at noon, this is what reality will look like.
Yeah.
So when you break that promise, you are effectively stealing that future reality away from them.
Oh, man. So you are a temporal thief.
The temporal thief, that's a great term for it. You've taken their time, their expectation, and their trust. And that act of theft fundamentally damages the core unit of your own character.
Okay, but if the consequences of this temporal theft are that severe, I mean, we're talking national decline, corporate bankruptcy, personal structural ruin.
Yeah, it's a lot.
How does the text suggest we handle the people who commit it? Like, how do we treat the quote-unquote low-level life?
The answer there is an absolute uncompromising zero-tolerance policy.
I figured it might be.
Yeah. The text advises that trust is the ultimate, non-negotiable filter for all human interaction. It states, plainly, that if someone is untrustworthy even a single time, you must never believe them again.
Never. Okay, are we really saying 0 second chances? What about genuine human error?
There is no carve-out for human error here.
But sometimes we make promises with the absolute best intentions, and circumstances wildly outside our control intervene.
Right, of course.
Like a severe illness or a canceled flight or a family emergency. Does the text really make absolutely no room for the chaos of living?
It offers 0 caveats for circumstance. This raises an important question about how we navigate relationships under such a rigid framework.
I mean, it's like a shattered mirror, right?
Yeah.
You can glue the pieces back together, but the crack is always visible. But does this mean personal growth is just impossible?
To back this up, the author leans on a traditional proverb that roughly translates to, "It's easy to change mountains and rivers, but hard to change a person's nature." Yeah. Basically, a leopard cannot change its spots. The essay essentially guarantees that an untrustworthy person will inevitably disappoint you a second time, a third time, and an nth time.
It's treating human relationships like aerospace engineering.
Oh, I like that. How do you mean?
Well, in aviation, if a mechanic finds a microscopic fracture in the wing of an airplane, they don't say, Well, it flew fine yesterday and the weather was rough. Let's give it another shot.
Right, they don't risk it.
Exactly. The structural integrity of the material is compromised.
Hmm.
The plane is grounded permanently. You just don't fly a compromised airframe hoping it holds together at 30,000 feet.
That engineering analogy perfectly captures the extreme rigidity of the author's worldview. Once the microfracture of a broken promise appears, the person is grounded, period.
It's so harsh.
It is. The tension here is really fascinating. On one side of the ledger, you have the author's intense, beautiful idealism regarding the absolute purity of a high-level life.
Yeah.
But on the other side, it is anchored by a profoundly dark cynicism regarding human behavioral change.
Right, because to claim it is physically easier to reroute a literal river than to rehabilitate a person who breaks a promise.
It's to entirely reject the concept of personal growth.
It demands that you view every broken promise not as an accident of circumstance, but as a deep revelation of core character.
Exactly.
I mean, if you, listening right now, applied this aerospace-level safety standard to your own contact list, how many people would actually survive the filter?
Not many, I guess.
One strike, one missed coffee date, one forgotten email, and they are permanently classified as a compromised entity.
It is a terrifying standard to hold society to, and honestly an even more isolating standard to hold yourself to.
Very true.
But the author doesn't stop at social isolation. If a person is permanently grounded by their broken promises, we have to ask, what is the actual value of a life lived without trust?
And the essay takes this logic to its absolute, literal life-or-death conclusion.
It really does.
This is where the sheer intensity of the language becomes genuinely jarring. The essay asserts that in life, you can lose absolutely anything, but you cannot lose trust, because losing it means losing all of your value.
Everything.
Everything. It explicitly claims it is better to lose everything, including your own life, than to lose your trustworthiness.
It requires a complete reorientation of self-preservation. Biological survival is universally understood as our deepest imperative, right? It's hardwired into us.
Right. Staying alive is usually goal number one.
But this text argues that biological survival is merely a low-level concern compared to the high-level necessity of invisible wealth. Preserving your heartbeat is secondary to preserving your word.
Could you imagine holding your promises in a higher regard than your own survival? Goes even further, stating that without trust, there is little chance of going to heaven.
Yeah, that's a big claim.
And whether you read heaven as a literal religious afterlife or as just the ultimate manifestation of high-level existence, the implication is total spiritual lockout.
A total lockout.
And then comes the line that really stops you in your tracks. The author concludes that an untrustworthy person's life quality is literally worse than a dog's.
Wait, literally worse than a dog's?
That's the translation.
To understand the philosophical logic behind the comparison, we really have to look at the hierarchy of beings.
Okay, how so?
A dog operates purely on its nature, right? It fulfills its biological and pack imperatives with absolute reliability. It has an inherent integrity to its design.
Right, a dog is just being a dog.
Exactly. A human being, however, possesses higher consciousness and the capacity for moral reasoning. So, when a human breaks a promise, they're actively using their higher consciousness to corrupt the fundamental order of existence.
Oh, I see. So a dog reliably fulfills its role, making it a pure entity, while a human who lies is a corrupted entity.
Precisely. The corrupted higher being is fundamentally lower than the uncorrupted animal.
Wow, that is quite the mental shift.
It is. The text defines trust as life's first line of defense. Imagine your existence as a highly secured architecture, like a fortress. Trust isn't the vault hidden deep inside. Trust is the outer perimeter wall. It is the very first thing the external world interacts with.
And if you surrender that perimeter wall, if you voluntarily break a promise just to save yourself some temporary discomfort or, to survive a little longer, the enemy doesn't just take the wall.
No, they take everything.
The text explicitly says life will suffer a total collapse.
The breach is absolute. Once the perimeter of invisible wealth falls, everything inside the intelligence, the visible wealth, the status is immediately overrun.
Right.
The biological life might continue to function, but the high-level life has ceased to exist.
Man. We started this deep dive looking at how modern society evaluates success through, a complex, forgiving spreadsheet of variables.
Yeah, we like our nuance.
We do. But through the lens of this essay, we are left staring at the jagged, unforgiving white line of an X-ray. You're either structurally whole or you are fatally compromised.
We've traced the mechanics of this invisible wealth and seen how it acts as a fractal, dictating the inevitable rise or fall of nations, enterprises, and individuals.
We explored the absolute zero-tolerance policy, treating a broken promise like a microfracture in an airplane wing that permanently grounds a human relationship.
Yeah.
And we followed the logic to its ultimate existential peak, the assertion that biological survival is totally worthless if it costs you your structural integrity, rendering a life without trust worse than that of an animal.
It forces a severe audit of how we interact with the future realities we promise to others.
It really does. So, to you listening, the next time you casually agree to a commitment, maybe just think about the architectural weight this essay places on that moment.
It's heavy.
Are you treating that simple yes as your life's absolute first line of defense?
Which leaves us with a highly complex mechanical problem to consider, I think. Yeah. If keeping promises is the ultimate, uncompromising measure of your invisible wealth, and humans are inherently flawed and subject to circumstances beyond our control, what happens when two promises violently collide?
Oh, man. Like what?
Imagine you made a promise to your employer to deliver a critical project, but you also made a promise to your child to be at their recital.
Right.
An unforeseen emergency forces a choice, and you must break one promise to fulfill the other.
It happens all the time.
Exactly. Under a system with absolutely zero tolerance and no caveats for circumstance, how does this rigid philosophy calculate who retains their high-level existence when the fundamental physics of reality force a breach in the perimeter wall?